For those of you who have not been fully introduced to me, my name is Mathew Kanour. I am a Toastmaster of almost 3 years with District 19, and I have eagerly learned and watched from a number of individuals within the district of their different speaking styles. I've been able to see individuals outside of our organization present, as well as individuals from TV, media. And a lot of the techniques and tips that we see on a daily basis apply to some of our body language, how we work with our physical being of presentation. I'm going to start with just a couple of questions, and I'll select a few individuals as guinea pigs and see what their thought processes are. But as a first question, as you think back to the presentations that you've seen, what is one of the key factors that you look into when you see somebody on a stage and present? I'm going to start with Sherry Sullivan, if I can.
Oh, cannot wait to answer this question. Thanks for asking. I was outside painting my tree, guys. What did you ask?
As you see, not a problem. I apologize for that.
No, you're good.
As you see and look to presentations that you may see other Toastmasters provide, other individuals in media that you may see, such as television presenters or public speakers in general, what are one of the main things that you key in onto when you see them presenting?
Ooh, thank you. So the ones that I key on them the most is, are they making a connection with me? Do I feel like they're really talking to me, or are they just kind of chatting to the air? The other thing that I really notice is if there are a lot of ums or stutters or maybe inappropriate pauses instead of effective ones. Those are the ones that I miss, or that I notice the most.
Absolutely. Very good. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank
With
you.
some of those items that we do key into, we may start to develop more of a tick towards some of them. And some of those ticks may include something that may turn into more of a pet peeve. A couple of my pet peeves include the multiple ums and ahs and those vocal stutters that we hear. As Toastmasters, of course, we've all served within the grammarian's role. And that grammarian's role really does give us the opportunity to hear that more often. Going to Jean, Simon, and Craig, if I may, as you've done that, what are one of the pet peeves that you key in on that really make your blood boil?
I would definitely say filler words. When I listen even on national podcasts and radio shows and NPR, and I'll hear people that are experts in their field, but they are full of filler words. And I have some pet filler words that usually even get me a little more excited, but that would be my idea. Those are mostly audio as opposed to visual.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A part of hearing some of those audio ticks and some of those audio flubs does honestly tie into some of our no-nonsense knowledge of presentation mastery. When we look to individuals on a stage, we hear their voice and we're able to comprehend a lot of what their words say. But when you see a full-bodied individual on a stage, taking into account the way that they move, the way that they carry themselves on a stage, you may start to find some things that honestly bother you about the way that they present. I'll turn to Seiko if I could. Seiko, when you see an individual presenting in person or are able to see their physical being present as opposed to just an audio format, what sort of things would you like to see from that individual?
Sure. Thank you, Matt, for your question. So did I understand correctly? So your question is, if I see in person, what you like to see from the speakers?
Absolutely. What are some of the main things that you would clue into on seeing a face-to-face speaker in this format, or perhaps an in-person on stage?
Yeah, I believe the eye contact is one of the very important piece that you have maybe like a 5 seconds or so, just kind of not totally off, but kind of talking to the audience. And then also the hand gestures and body movement, of course, how excited they are. We can tell by their smile, the face gestures. So those are the clues that I would seek. And yeah, thank you for asking the questions, Matt.
Very good. Thank you, Seiko. In that question, I wanted to bring everything to a roundabout basis in presentation mastery. While a lot of our audio component to speeches or presentations do have a large process of how we look to how professional a speaker is, a lot of the big takeaway that we may have from those sorts of speakers comes from the body language that we see these individuals present. As we take a look towards something that is currently and actively happening, we take a look towards perhaps the presidential debates or the vice presidential debates. When you have a speaker at a podium, are you more apt to listen to someone who is straight up, proud of how they carry themselves, or someone who chooses to lean on a podium, someone who chooses to have their shoulders slack and not really seem as interested in the topic that they're looking at? I would like to have everyone in the group or in the chat, I'd like to have everyone type what they see first from a presentation standpoint, whether it's a stance style, the way that an individual moves their hands, eye contact, something that you as a evaluator would look for in a presentation style. As you're thinking about that, think to how it applies to some of your own presentation style. Are these maybe things that you are finding yourself a little guilty of? Are they items that, as you are thinking about them, are things that you'd like to see other members in your club reflect on? Give a couple moments here just to see. And we are getting some excellent answers here. Eye contact is a big one coming up. There is one, and I'd like to call out Sherry Washburn. Sherry, you put interest or apathy / rapport. And that does sound a lot to say connecting with your audience. Would you please elaborate on that just a little more?
We've all seen speakers come up who obviously are only there because they have to be. If they're not interested in the topic, why should I be? If they're showing apathy, why should I care? Why should I listen? Why should I waste my time on them? And the rapport, definitely, that's tied to the interest level too. If they're not interested, I don't care. So they've not established a rapport with me. Now, I have had some people who would get up. Their topic was something I truly didn't want to sit through, but I was required to for one reason or another. But if they were really into the topic, they caught my attention. I listened through the whole thing, and maybe I even learned something in the process. So to me, those are really important aspects, and that's got to happen immediately.
Absolutely.
That can't happen 5 minutes into the presentation. It can't happen 2 minutes in the presentation. It has to happen the minute they walk up there.
Very good. I definitely appreciate that elaboration, Sherry. Thank you for doing so. as I'm looking through a lot of these answers, the confidence and how they use the stage, eye contact, the active interest that they have in their program, confidence in themselves, how they use the stage. We're seeing a lot of very similar themes of movement matters and connection matters. Running through our time frame here today, I'd like to cover 3 very basic and very relatable items across all 3 of those contents, or across all 3 of those contents: face, chest, and legs. In the world of modeling, individuals will always say that hair, body, and face matter. But in the world of Toastmasters and in the world of presenting, it's honestly in the face, in the body, and in the legs. Beginning with face, we see a very common theme of us being able to connect with an audience through our faces. In fact, as we look out here through Zoom, we see individuals' faces across all of our screens. If we are able to see these faces, are we able to clue in with eye contact? Are we able to see those interests? I just saw Sherry turn her camera on. Sherry Sullivan, I think you took that for a little example. Thank you. But as we think about some of that connection through utilizing our face and through utilizing our eye contact, we want to keep in mind that it's very rare to be able to connect with an audience at all times. In our evaluation forms for Toastmasters, one of the primary items that we utilize is audience awareness. From an advanced Toastmaster standpoint, some of us may see that as being sure where our audience is at all times. But there are some Toastmasters that do translate that to mean that our eye contact, along with being that eye contact portion in our evaluation, we're able to understand what our audience wants us to connect with. And more often than not, through our facial rapport and through our interest that we're able to show on our faces, we're able to create that connection. In a previous TED Talk, and I will be more than happy to provide a link to that on the District 19 website, I had an opportunity to listen to a presenter talk a little bit about how feelings connect with an audience. Through our facial features, we are able to do a lot. And some of those basic facial features will connect with an audience in ways that maybe we don't even comprehend. There are 6 basic feelings that humans feel: happiness, sadness, disgust. There are definitely 3 others that I am currently forgetting at the moment, and I apologize for that. Happiness, sadness, disgust, fear. And I'll drop the other 2 in the group chat here shortly after as well. I'll make sure that we have that discussion point available to us. But those emotions translate into different items that we may be able to connect with. Let's say from a speech standpoint, if Jean is coming up and providing a speech in regards to a moment that brought her the most joy in her life, if we really want to connect with that as an audience, we're going to want to see joy, a large smile, big eyes. And that eye contact with those large eyes and those big, broad features, including a smile, teeth, seeing the corners of your eyes crinkle when you speak about the subject, that's really going to connect with an audience. If we were to hear Sharon perhaps talk about something that really agitated her the other day. This is honestly my resting face, just consistently angry. So that's a joy that I love to work around myself. But if Sharon were presenting about a topic that honestly made her infuriated throughout the week, we'll be looking for crossed brows, as I like to call them, the smooth forehead away from the raised forehead, your Wi-Fi symbols on your forehead. A lot of these features are going to be the continuous connection between seeing someone and actually understanding someone in that moment. Given the time frame that we are in with COVID, with our virtual meeting standpoint, everything that we have tried to do as Toastmasters is now here. It's from shoulder length and above, unless you're an individual who loves to stand and present your speeches. A lot of our facial features will also help enhance that vocal volume, a lot of the presentation that is going to be audibly heard. In speaking to the apathy or the interest in a presentation, Sherry Washburn brought up a very fantastic example. If I were not super thrilled to be giving this presentation today, I may mumble through some items. I may choose to kind of get quieter. I may not be as thrilled or as entertained with it. And within those few seconds that I maybe drop off, or the information that I am providing does not click in the same way, you are going to lose that content. Broad vocals, not just from the chest, but also from the mouth. Pronunciation and enunciation, making sure that every word is clear. I would like to, if I can pick on someone here real quick again, I am going to use Tammy Dunn Peterson if I can. And Tammy, I would like you, if you could, to tell us again about the award that you won today for Division Director Challenge. And I would like you to tell us about that award as if you genuinely had no care about it. If you would, please.
Thank you, Matthew. Well, I got this award today, and I don't even really know what it was for. I guess the rest of the people in my division did something really cool, and they got their names all in a hat. And I got this silly shirt to wear. I mean, I could have got that anywhere. I don't even know how I won it. I guess it was a good thing, but big deal. It was a shirt. I have lots of shirts in my closet. Maybe somebody else will win it next year and be more excited than I was. But yeah, it was okay, I guess.
So Tammy, in giving us that little example, what facially do you believe that you did to make that sound as if it was genuinely the worst part of the Hall of Fame ceremony that we could have seen? What, as you were speaking, did you feel in your face that you were doing to make that quote unquote awful?
Probably lack of eye contact and maybe some eye rolling.
Very good.
Not a genuine smile, kind of just a flat face, I guess.
Awesome. So as we listen to that example, there are moments that we can take an eye roll and use it as something to enhance our speech. If we're using a quote, if we're telling it in a story. If you were a part of Tony Dahlman's storytelling session earlier today, you would have absolutely learned how some emphasis on things like that will enhance your story. But in those moments when we are trying to genuinely connect, if you do not feel the same enthusiasm in your face, whether it's a broader, more genuine smile, whether it's this feeling in your eyes that you genuinely want to connect with an individual, whether it's through making sure you see them or making sure that you connect on your screen with somebody, you'll find that difference. Now, Tammy, if I could this time around, I'll have you explain a little bit about that award a second time. But now I would love to hear enthusiasm. Let it show on your face and let it feel on your face.
Thank you, Matthew. I earned this really cool award today. I love to have shirts that represent things. I have a drawer full of shirts from my kids' school activities. And I love Toastmasters so much. I'm so excited that I get to proudly represent this group now. And I have a shirt that can tell that I'm on it. And there were 25 other people that won this too. So somewhere across our Division W, there's 25 people that have vintage logo Toastmasters shirt on it, and we all get to share that when we go out in the public and promote Toastmasters. It was really fun earning that shirt. It wasn't super hard work to earn that. Just did what I was supposed to do and promoted it with the other members, and I'm so excited that I got it.
Very good. Thank you, Tammy. Small show of hands. Who would rather hear from speaker 2 than they would from speaker 1? Exactly. Tammy's enthusiasm in her voice, the way that that enthusiasm showed across her face, the genuine smile, it shows that big difference between an individual that you would want to hear from and an individual that maybe you kind of have to hear from. I'm wholeheartedly expecting that that's what this session is. And I'm hoping that you guys are more so excited to hear me as opposed to feeling like you have to. So thank you all so much for attending so far. Across our face, we have a very obvious one. We have a very obvious item that we do want to avoid, and that is, of course, covering our face as best as possible. I provided a solid example while Tammy was speaking. And when in the camera frame, the majority of us are showing from maybe chest to shoulder up. This is our frame to show off who we are as speakers, and the same way as listeners. Doing something like this will muffle your voice, take away from the presentation style. It takes away a little bit of that interest as well in whatever you're talking about, where if you're having to present something, I wouldn't expect people to want to listen to me looking like this. I would hope that in that case, they would log off. And in any case, you all are welcome to do so right now if you choose to. But making sure that we have that visual content of our face, making sure that our enthusiasm shows, and as best as possible, that enthusiasm matching the same energy on our faces. It helps to connect with that audience and helps to find them in a different place with what you're presenting. We've covered face, and now we'll cover a little bit of body. This will be a little more applicable to maybe when we're in person, or if you maybe have to present something at work, if you are still working within an office, or have a little bit more of a upper body when you are speaking and presenting. At any point, and please excuse me, it has been a very difficult quarantine. So I appreciate everyone being very gentle about how I look. Thank you so much. With a lot of our speaking presentation styles, as you saw when Cindy and I were providing the opening session and some of our Hall of Fame, I'm an individual who loves to speak from this range. Now, more often than not, I have gotten comments here and there about how I present from chest to barrel. In many speaking presentations, a lot of that will be very effective based on how you're presenting. The way that I've seen it, this is very much an educational style, almost like a band conductor, where you've got your simple hand gestures, moving out, moving in, moving up, and moving down. A lot of this is going to reflect how you present, how you're looking to maybe provide something to a different audience. Now, of course, we do have our traditional and more go-to casuals when it comes to presentations. A lot of the time when I'm presenting speeches, and by a show of hands, I would love to see how many people find themselves doing this as well. I'm more often than not a hands in the pocket sort of individual. By a show of hands, is there anybody who also finds themselves with hands in pockets while they speak? A couple people, okay, very good. I'm very thankful that I'm not the only one. I'm so thankful for that, so thank you. I don't feel too alone in this. Often than anything else, those hands in the pockets distract. They bring you to this closed off space where if you are simply presenting a speech, You have no way of communicating or emphasizing any sort of body language that you're used to. You're here. You're here. But you look so still up top. You look so consistently blank from here, or from chest to waist, that everything feels blocked in. Almost like a building block, only you're a weird shaped one. And if anything like me, you're one of those arches in the building block sets that you can't really find a use for. In circling back to some of the emotions that we've talked about before, we'll continue to use happiness and sadness as a couple of examples. Dave Spenta, a joyous individual. In speaking and working with Dave, I've had some opportunities to work with him, and there has not been an opportunity that he hasn't been excited about. In seeing Dave present, I know in the same manner he presents some of these feelings through his hand gestures. And if we were talking about something that brings him joy, we may see hands to the chest, a subtle moment that basically says there's a love or a joy here that you can feel. Making sure that there's a genuine movement outside of the usual here to here or your simple hand movements. But you also have plenty of stage from where you're directing. As of right now, essentially, I'm about 6 feet away from my computer. I'm trying to follow CDC guidelines just as best as I can, so we'll see how I keep that up. But in moments of anger, let's say, Ed, you're a presenter as well, and it looks like you have quite the open space there. If you're providing a speech that, in the same way that Sharon did, she found something that made her angry, you want that space. You want to be able to make angry gestures, push people away, make sure that they feel that rage. Anything, there you go, something shakeable. Really make people get into the presentation itself. I'll use someone as another guinea pig here, and since I've already started to pick on some people in Division Y, I'll use Tony Dahlman, if I may. Tony is a member of our Advanced Toastmasters Club here in District 19, and more often, or in West Des Moines, Division Y, with Capital City Advanced Presenters. And more often than not, Tony has a very fantastic space that he can utilize. Tony, I would like to hear a little bit about your worst injury. 1 to 2 minutes, but I would love to see you present with your hands behind your back or perhaps in your pockets, wherever they're most comfortable.
Okay. Let's.
If I could, I'll have you stand while you do so, if that's
let's
possible.
do this.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So it was my senior year. I'm playing football, and it's the homecoming game. And I was I was selected as a member of the homecoming court earlier in the week, and I am a defensive lineman on the football team. And it's the last play before halftime, and the defense is out on the field, and I'm up struggling against an offensive lineman, and I'm trying to block, and I end up just trying to get one last push on somebody, and he ends up pushing me, and I end up going back, and I end up twisting my knee, and I fall backwards, and I just feel that crackle in my knee that ends up that you just know something is wrong, and that you're kind of in pain about it, and I kind of limp off the field, but I have to run over to the sideline because all of the homecoming candidates have to be on a float, and so somehow I'm able to evade a lot of the attention of my coaches, but I end up able to make the homecoming float, but I didn't end up playing much in the second half, and my knee has really never been the same for the rest of my life. So.
Very good. Stay standing for just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
The descriptor words, we all heard them. Crackle. We heard the leg injury. We heard about it. But maybe we aren't getting the full effect. Tony's clarity is fantastic. Tony has a fantastic word choice. But you look at him, and you see him standing there with hands in his pockets. And to me, that takes me back to middle school. That takes me back to having to tell a story to my parents because of whatever grade I got on my report card wasn't so thrilling. Tony, with that same story, something very similar, use a little bit of hand gestures, use some body language. The same body language that you may feel capable and culpable of using during a storytelling presentation.
So it's the last play before halftime of the homecoming game of my senior year. And I'm in battle with the guy across me on the offensive line. And we're battling each other out. And I try to give him one last block, and then he shoves me, and I just fall back on my left knee here. And I can feel it twist, and I can hear it crackle. And I know that it's something is wrong. I kind of fall back onto the field, and I kind of limp off onto the field. But I'm a member of the homecoming court, so I have to get over to a float that rides around on the track around the football field. And I'm able to get over to that float, but I'm limping over there, and I really don't play much in the second half of that football game, and my knee has not been the same my entire life.
Very good. Thank you, Tony. Show of hands. Who caught more of the body language that Tony was able to use there with his hands out and eligible instead of behind his back in his pocket? Excellent. Very obvious there that Tony used a lot of motion-based and distance-based body language over there around the field. By having those opportunities to use our body language for something different, for being able to provide distance instead of explaining or just being educational, much in the way that I am from chest to barrel, we have that opportunity to really make our presentation something different. Another solid example, and again, I'll pick on Dave Spencer here, just briefly. Dave once provided a story about the opportunity that he had to be a superhero. And in that presentation, Dave used several motions of picking someone up. And he didn't just state, we picked them up. He used a raising motion, made sure that it seemed as if we could see him picking somebody up from the armpits. Really made sure that it emphasized that he was helping this individual get back to where they needed to be. Covering face, covering body, we'll cover legs. This will be one of the more difficult items to provide some insight on over Zoom, but I'm very thankful to be able to have some discussion around this instead. When we see an individual present, and when we see them use the entirety of their stage, we'll see individuals moving back and forth. A solid example is, of course, our speech contest at the international level. We see those opportunities for individuals to move within their space, really make something different of it. A time frame, a distance between point A to point B, maybe the past and the present and the future, really making their points known within that story. I would like to ask a few people. I'll check in with Vicki Feldman. Vicki, as you consider individuals who storytell and people who provide speeches, what are some of the things that you've seen people use a stage the most for when moving back and forth?
Oh, usually when they're using bigger gestures, they move across the stage more than if they're using smaller hand gestures.
Very good. Very good example. We have this innate want to see people as humans, to see them present in a very different fashion than maybe we're used to. circling back to our feelings that we present with. This time around, we'll use happiness and fear as two solid examples. When speaking about a joyous moment, you may see an individual walk in broader strides, maybe provide a more open body language, seeing them take a large step forward with their right foot and maybe open their arms up to some sort of joy that they're feeling, or to some sort of happiness that they have the opportunity to maybe embrace. Seeing those movements really help develop how an individual has a takeaway from a presentation opportunity. If we have the chance to convey fear, we may see smaller steps. We may see these opportunities to utilize bits and pieces of the stage as opposed to presenting words and vocals, but still taking the same stride. We may see an individual on their tiptoes talking about how they had the biggest fear of sneaking back into their home after being out too late while still living with their parents. We may see an individual sneaking into a movie theater where they shouldn't be. Those sorts of variety in steps that we are able to take when conveying a sort of emotion or a message that we want to have our speakers and listeners take away from a presentation can really amplify how loud that message is. I'll ask for a couple peeves here, and I would like to go to Laura if I can. When you see an individual present, what is movement-wise when they're utilizing their stage, what's something that you really don't want to see someone do when they're taking their movements?
I do not want to do this.
Perfect.
Go like this. I don't want them to go like this. I want them to be able to move around, to move their eyes, move their hands, move their body, move their legs, enjoy the presence of having people around them.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic example of some of the upper body language that we have this opportunity to move away from. The self-hugging, the hands in the pockets, the crossed arms in the front, something that I am very guilty of consistently and something that I work to be away from as well. Who, as a show of hands, who wants to see an individual stand on stage with their legs crossed, planting them in place? Not seeing a lot of hands. That's interesting. I know that in some cases there are opportunities for storytelling where you can use that as planting roots, but I love to see, I should say, a strong stance, something wide. Show of hands this time around, and this will be another poor example, but this is more so the legs crossed. You see me wobbling. You see me with very poor coordination and poor balance. So someone please have 911 ready if I happen to fall. Standing here, you see me wobble. This legs crossed doesn't provide me the same opportunity to move about. But here, my legs are at these points. A more sturdy stance, more of an opportunity to be able to move out of the camera frame, more of an opportunity to take these strides. Not only do our strides have everything to do with how we present, so do our stances. As a final, I'm actually nearing the end of my presentation. I would love to open up the floor a little bit, talk about a couple other peeves that individuals may have or items that we may want to circle back on with questions. I would love to hear a little bit about what all of you may have taken away from this.
Matt, and I just wanted to share that one of the things that is helpful is when people make sure that they stay towards the audience. If they're walking around, do not have your back towards the audience because you lose the audio and you lose the facial expressions and all that stuff. That's one of the things that I don't like.
Absolutely. That's a very solid example where if you want to make sure that you're perhaps gesturing to a different group, your side stances, making sure that you keep making sure you keep the front of your body open towards your crowd to ensure that they have something to take away from it. Very good. I saw Jean, Simon and Craig with your hand up. Jean, go ahead.
There, I just put it in. I'd like to just get some more feedback because we're evaluating, using a lot of different evaluation criteria now because of being on Zoom. What are the best ways to use hand gestures if you are in a seated Zoom presentation? We've been playing with it. How do you enhance your talk without looking like you're trying too hard?
Absolutely. That's a very solid question that honestly, when we first moved to a lot of the Zoom platforms, or a lot of the virtual platforms, whether they were Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, or even Zoom, that I was struggling with myself as well. And that's a very solid question to ask. For myself personally, I like ensuring that I have at least this much body to see, at least towards that clavicle and just a little lower, just to ensure that you kind of have, and I flipped my video just because I needed to make sure that our timing sheets were good when they popped up. But just making sure that you have at least kind of an even space between your head and when you look at yourself in that box, making sure that there we go, making sure that your hands fit within that frame. A lot of it has to do with the perception of what you're going to be presenting. If you have an educational speech or something that your hand gestures are going to be very basic for, the knowledge of knowing where your face is. And this may seem a little try hard and maybe a little bit as if you're overthinking it or thinking about it just a little much, quote unquote. I do think that ensuring that you know between your chin and the bottom of your box is a solid option to have any sort of education plan. A gesture to an individual, a small bar across the bottom. When providing something a little more emotional, you want to make sure that all of your presentation is up in here. At least for me, when I talk and make jokes, I love to have a snap. I love to have a witty hand gesture up here. But if you'll see, when you get a little closer to your face, you have some of that shadow cut through. Being able to pull back and utilize some of that hand gesture not only cuts away from the shadow across your face, but it also makes you seem as if you have that room. This time around, you're making sure that you've actively provided yourself some new locations to put your hands. And the more that you do think about it, the more that it becomes that second nature. The more that you just start gesturing in this place now that you've given yourself this new frame, and now that you've provided yourself the room to do so.
I'll just say one thing, that we are local public access channel because our meetings are broadcast. We had a session with the producer there on how to optimize our look, because we are recording gallery views and like that. And he gave us the point of having if you had your Zoom square divided up into thirds, your eyes should be on the first third, that line that's going there, which does give you more of the space down below, and then make sure you're far enough back, like you're saying, so that that's the shadows. But so it does give you some place to put your hands and and gesture. But so that's how we all try to orient ourselves in the frame.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good.
And Jean does bring up a very fantastic point that in learning from their network producer, there is a rule within photography called the rule of thirds. And it's the same way in broadcast, where you'll essentially have I'll move in the proper direction, at least eventually, where you split your grid out into 9 blocks. And when you have those 9 blocks, you have the opportunity to put your face in that center block, or at least have it within the frame to make yourself seem more available. If you do find yourself in kind of the middle of the frame, this works. I'm on a cord there, sorry about that. This works if you are looking to maybe gesture to something. In the same way that if you want something presented, you may be screen sharing, you'll have your screen pop up and be able to gesture below, or gesture to please look over here. So knowing that rule of thirds, and that's thank you for bringing that up, Jean, where you know where the splits in your screen are to make your presentation look stronger via the virtual outlet. Anybody else, or any other maybe questions or comments that we may have based on other people's personal experiences with presentation? Tammy.
I know one of the things that drives me nuts when I have helped some 4-H kids do their speeches is constantly fidgeting with their clothes or their hair. I don't want to see, usually girls, but guys with longer bangs and stuff, constantly pushing it out of their face. So pin it back, stick a headband on, guys get the bangs trimmed so they're not in there. That's just even just talking to someone one-on-one, that drives me nuts when they're constantly fidgeting with a collar, a shirt, a necklace, whatever. It's something to watch for.
That is a very, and you may have caught me looking around because I honestly thought that I had a paper clip handy. For making sure that hair is out of the way, definitely pinning it back, making sure that it's up. But if you do still find yourself fidgeting, for whatever reason, whether it be a new speech or a new topic that you're providing information on, one of the solid go-tos that I learned kind of in college when I started taking speech classes and getting more involved with public speaking and talking professionally was if you keep a paper clip in the palm of your hand, right there, kind of in the center, you have the opportunity to kind of run your thumb over it. You may see my fingers moving a little bit, but when I'm presenting, you don't really see that. You have the opportunity to clench around it. You have the opportunity to make a gesture. You have every opportunity, but you still are able to keep whatever this little touchpad is, this little touchstone, that whatever you want to make it in the palm of your hand, you're able to focus. You're able to have more of an opportunity to center yourself. So if you ever do find yourself fidgety before a topic, consider putting a paper clip in there or making sure that you have something handy and ready, but small enough that it won't detract away from the subject of your speech. Dave.
Some cameras actually have a way that you can set the settings so that it will follow you, which can be a little bit creepy. Depending on where you go or how close you get, the camera should follow your face. There it goes. Whoa. I got to stop that. I'm getting dizzy.
Very good. Definitely something to look into as you're moving about. They do have the auto traction, or I believe it's a traction function of some sort, where cameras will continue to zoom in and out as they need to follow your face, make sure that you are well seen. Thank you for that, Dave. With that, I do want to thank you all for attending today. My major goal was to just make sure that there was something of worth to take away from today. And if I have helped anybody with anything, I am eternally grateful for that, just to have said that I was able to present to fellow Toastmasters like yourselves. So thank you for attending today's session.